After watching this video, I'm hoping that you'll be able to take any coordinate, any point that you're given, and describe its meaning in context. So we're going to use the problems at the bottom of your worksheet to try to understand this concept. So we're going to begin by looking at number 10. In number 10 it says, what does the point in number 1, 240 represent in context? Write a complete sentence to explain. So we need a subject, we need a verb, we need a complete thought. So I'm going to scroll back up to number 1. So we're looking at graph 1 and we're going to hone in on the point 240. Alright, so there's graph 1. Then we need the point 240. So this is the point that we're looking at. To write a sentence to make sense of any coordinate, I'm going to have you write down 4 things before you write your sentence. Number 1, you're going to write the variables. So 2 goes with x, and the 40 goes over to the y-axis. The 40 is the y value. So we just labeled the first 2 items. Then I want you to record the words on the x and the y-axis. So games goes with the x value. And then you'll see over here, points is a part of the y-axis. So y represents points. Once you've written down those 4 things, x, y, games, and points, we're ready to describe the meaning of 240 in context. When I write my sentence, I just need to make sure that somewhere in the sentence it says 2 games, and somewhere in the sentence it says 40 points. So you want to start thinking about a sentence that you could write. For example, I could say, Mary scored 40 points in, we could say 2 games. If you wanted to be more specific, you could say, Mary scored 40 points in 2 basketball games. You know what sport she's playing. You could use a different person besides Mary. You could say LeBron James scored 40 points in 2 games. Although I think maybe he might score more than 20 points per game. We don't want to break it down to the unit rate where we say 20 points per game because we want to specifically talk about this point. Even though on average, if you score 40 points in 2 games, your average would be 20 points per game. They're asking you to specifically describe this point 240. So you have to use the number 2 in your sentence, and you have to use the number 40 in your sentence. You can't simplify it. So there's the answer to number 10. Let's go ahead and scroll down and look at question number 11 and see what point they're asking us about. All right, so number 11, what does the point in number 2, 0, 0 represent in context? Write a complete sentence to explain. 0, 0. I told you before that we can't use 0, 0 to find unit rate. But just because we can't use 0, 0 to find unit rate does not mean that we can't explain what 0, 0 represents in context. This is something you can do with 0, 0. So let me go back to graph number 2. And in graph number 2, let's take a look at 0, 0. So the point is 0, 0. And that is also known as the origin. So the point is 0, 0. I told you that we need to write 4 things before we write our sentence. So the first 2 things are going to be the variables. So x goes with 0, and then the other 0 goes with y. So that's the first 2. Then we need to write the words. So x goes with hours. Hours is what the x variable represents. And then y represents dollars. I've written 4 things. 1, 2, 3, 4 things. So I'm ready to write my sentence. So I need a sentence that has the words 0 hours and $0 in it. So I could say, if I work for 0 hours, I will make $0. So you'll notice I use the word 0 hours and I use the word $0 in my sentence. And that's it. I just explained the meaning of that point in this context. Let me clear this. And let's do another example. All right, number 12. What does the point in number 7, 5, 200 represent in context? Write a complete sentence to explain. So we are going to scroll to graph number 7, and we're going to look at 5, 200. All right, here's graph number 7, and we're going to look at 5, 200. Let me see if I can scroll over. All right, now that I've scrolled over, we'll look at 5, 200. So if this is 4 and this is 6, halfway in between would be 5. And then we scroll over this way to 200. And 200 is the y value. The x value is the 5. And I need to write 2 more things. So I'm going to write that the x value represents minutes. You can see on the x-axis that we have the word minutes. That's how I figured out what goes with x and with the 5. And then on the y-axis we have the word sit-ups. So y represents, all of these numbers represent the number of sit-ups. So I'm going to write over here sit-ups. I'm ready for my sentence because now I've written 1, 2, 3, 4 things. So I could say, President Trump does 200 sit-ups in, oh, I'm running out of room, in 5 minutes. Just trying to have a little fun with it, something silly. So you'll see that I included 5 minutes, and you'll also see that I included 200 sit-ups in my sentence. So you don't have to use President Trump, you could use any person, but you have to have the idea in there that it's 200 sit-ups in a period of 5 minutes. That's how fast, or that's the rate. So I cleared that information because I wanted to share with you one more example. Earlier, we talked about working for 0 hours and making $0. Well, the .00 is going to mean something different on each graph that you have. For example, on number 7, 0, doesn't mean that if you work for 0 hours, you're going to make $0. Instead, take a look. The X goes with minutes, and the Y value goes with sit-ups. And so 0, 0 here doesn't mean that you make $0 in 0 hours. It means that maybe I could say I do 0 sit-ups in 0 minutes. Or I could say if I'm exercising for 0 minutes, then I'm going to do 0 sit-ups. Because if I'm not spending any time exercising, there's no way that I could be doing any sit-ups. So just because you get the same coordinate 0, 0 doesn't mean that it's going to mean the same thing in context. Context means that in this situation, like the story that you're currently talking about, and this story about minutes and sit ups is different than the story about hours and the amount of money that you're making. You're talking about something different.